Want to say good morning to everybody got it locked in. Early bird gets the worm. Bishop Money, this mix has been brought to you by Cuban Libre. That's it, and that's all, y'all. It's now time. It is what it is.
Opinions expressed on this talk show do not reflect the management and staff of 102.7 FM, The Riddim.
On many things that we can't control. It makes us lose our bearings, forget the goal. We can't change the weather, the future of people's minds, but yet we focus on them all the time. We must accept the things that we cannot change. Try to stop pointing fingers and assigning the blame. Courage is needed to fix what we can. Use wisdom to know the difference, be a better man. Cause it is what it is.
Good morning, Grand Bahama. No, good morning, the Bahamas. We all over the place. How you doing? This is C. Allen Johnson sitting in the seat for Darren Cooper on It Is What It Is. Today, we're going to take this into a little deeper. We're going to talk about what Grand Bahama is. I call it the Grand Deception. And so we will see where we take this from here. The Grand Deception, because I want Bahamians to know, something we never get to discuss, is the position that Grand Bahama plays in the economic development of the Bahamas and the role it was intended to play going back to 1955. And I call it the Grand Deception is because you may realize that our economic stagnation may be on purpose more so than it is on incompetence, ineptitude, and inability. Mind you, they may sit in there, but it is. I invite your phone calls today, 698-1027. Got any questions? 688-1027. 688-1027. I invite you to call in. You want to ask about Grand Bahama? I want you to ask about the economic issues we are facing, whether it be the airport, whether it be the hotel, the Xanadu, the harbor, whatever it is, there is a reason for things happening. One of the things that we realize is that you have instances of a lot of statements and announcements and pronouncements that's going on. We have almost like an endemic collapse of governance. We have garbage that can't be picked up. We get hospitals that can't be built. We get schools that can't be maintained. We have vendors and other individuals that can't be paid. And what we do get from the individuals is something called sound bite governance by 5-year celebrities. And so what we have to do is we have to move to begin to hold those 5-year celebrities, and those in possession of the sound bite governance, we have to begin to hold them accountable. And what it is we have been giving them implicit consent by our silence to do what we want them to do. And so let me just start with a quick short prayer. Like I see Darren do. I do believe in the supernatural. And so let's start. Heavenly Father, we come before your throne of grace today, praying that you bring us understanding, bring us a level of comprehension. May we come together as a community for the economic development, personal development, and restoration of our economics, of our families, and of our communities. We are willing, Father, if you just give us the insight, give us the vision that is necessary for us to build a better community. We ask these in your name and your Son, named Jesus Christ. Amen. So let's start off today speaking about what is wrong with Grand Bahama in spite of the billions of dollars of promises that has been made to us in this economy. First of all, we must look at the timeline of those announcements. If you go back and you hear about the billions of dollars of announcement, they're spread out over the last 10 years. So when you say 3.5 billion or whatever, those are announcements. Some of them no longer even exist today, but they're still being announced and pronounced as being existing. And those that has been promised are stagnant. I invite contrary points of views, more so from the office of the Prime Minister, those on New Providence or here on Grand Bahama. Call in, text in, WhatsApp in, whatever it is, to simply say, see, Alan, you're wrong in this respect. I prefer to call in so we can begin to have a dialogue exactly on it. You must understand that Grand Bahama plays a political role, a pivotal role in the potential of changing the dynamics of how we govern in the Bahamas. Now, I'm not going to take you into the political history on how Grand Bahama became the center of politics with the PLP moving on Grand Bahama, or the fact on how this became known as FNN country. We want to talk about what is possible and why it has not happened. Many of you have heard for 20 plus years that I've been home, every year we're going to have a digital Grand Bahama, we're going to have a technology hub, we're going to have a place for the creatives and all of these different things. None of it has happened. I put to you that it has not even begun. Don't mind what they say. I hope somebody can challenge me. Let's add the Port Authority to this also, the GBPA. They have not begun other than harvested ideas and talking points from the internet. What you have is individuals who can go to search, put together a good speech, put together an announcement. This was called sound bites from 5-year celebrities, and begin to make an announcement about what is potentially what can happen and what they're working on. Just ask yourself, look around the world and look at the hundreds and thousands of companies that have been created in the digital era. Look at the tech hubs that has come about into existence with less than we have, less than our geo positioning. So look at the businesses that came up in the technology environment. Look at economies that has grown in the tourism. Let's put it in the correct wording. In the travel, hospitality, and tourism industry, or sectors, if you want to call it a sector or an industry. Look at the billions and trillions of dollars that has been developed. We were the first free port. Not the word free, not one word, free port. The word is free port, which is an economic zone for empowerment. I'm going to explain that a little later. The second part of it is look at the fact that we has been designated pre-21st century, which began on January 1st, 2001. The Bahamas has been designated as the most digitally prepared country in the world. Now, we have to be very careful on that wording. The most digitally prepared country in the world is not the most digitally utilized. Preparedness is like a seed. It's prepared to become an oak tree, but it has to be planted, nurtured, and whatever else to get to where it is. So we are the most digitally prepared. Do you know that Grand Bahama, if treated as a country, would be the second most digital prepared country in the world? So here it is that you have the second most digital prepared country in the world, sitting in the most digitally prepared country in the world, and yet we've had economic stagnation going back pre-2004. A lot of people like to use the jump off of 2000, the twin hurricanes of 2004. But we began to see economic stagnation even before then. And we only need to go and look at our tourism numbers that went as high as 1 million tourism per year. And we went down to, I think, 20, 30, maybe 50,000 in 2020 after the 2019 Dorian event. And that's the stopover visitors. And now we have Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Grand Bahama talking about this. Grand Bahama is the fastest growing tourism destination. Yeah, we are going from 20,000 to 30,000 to 40,000, but we have not reached pre-2019 levels. So what they're saying is we're the fastest growing Imagine that you were wiped out and you're trying to get to 100,000 people per year, and you're the fastest growing area in the entire Bahamas who was not even touched. That tells you the state of our market. Think about that now. We're maybe at 107, let's put it at even 110,000 stopover visitors per year. Imagine that you're the fastest growing in the entire country. After you were wiped out in 2019, you're not even at 1/10 of what you were for your highest point, but you're the fastest growing economy. This is where the soundbite governance come in. It makes you feel good. It sounds good. You're the fastest growing. So if the rest of the country is growing at 0.5% and you're growing at 0.6%, they tell you you're the fastest growing, not mentioning to you that you need to grow at 10% to make it the way you were in 10 years. Think of that. So what we've had is we've been lulled to sleep. We have been gaslighted, reverse gaslighted, gish gallop, and fire hose. Fire hosing is the favorite method of politicians in the Bahamas. If you remember, they call fire hosing. It's kind of like when the blacks were protesting in the U.S. and they came with the fire hose and they put the water on them, they overwhelmed them. That's what fire hosing is, where they overwhelm you with information, announcement, pre-announcement. We've had ministers come to us and says, we are announcing to you today that we will soon be back to you to give you the announcement of when we will make the announcement to start the bazaar. That doesn't how it works. If a leader or a business person cannot give you dates, it's something called a gap analysis, a cost analysis, a time analysis, and KPI, they have no plan. And I determine when they make these announcements, people say, well, see, Alan, how do you know with such accuracy that they are lying, saying mistruths? And I says, their lips are moving. That's the easiest way. Because nothing is coming out of it that makes sense except an announcement. When you say, I'm going to build an African Caribbean destination at a former location in the bazaar, you have a synopsis of the time, of the gap analysis. This is where we are. This is where we're going to be. It's a plan. It's a savvy vision, a plan, and a strategy, and an execution, monitoring and adaptation to it so you could adjust. You cannot get a plan from any announcement that has been made on this island in the last 15 years. And I challenge someone to tell me they have, or they could get it in the next 2 weeks while I'm here. You can't get it on the hospitals. You can't get it on the state of our schools. Do we know whether we need more schools or less schools? Do we know the actual conditions of our schools? And would we need to get it to where it needs to be first as the plantation location over the next 10 years? Do we know what is needed to bring it into the 21st century for the learning environments our children have become accustomed to? Just consider, every single person in our education system right now, mostly in our K-12 going forward, is in where? They were born after 2001. That means that every single person from K to K-12, maybe as much as a college and university, was born in the 21st century. Yet we're using paper, pencils, chalkboards, and type of an environment for our learning when the rest of the world has already been digitized. So here it is that we can't tell us the conditions of our schools, nor a strategy to bring them to where they need to be, and that's just the physical structure. Then we have to have a conversation concerning what is it we need to bring the education system into the 21st century. That's another strategy. Then we need a strategy as preparation of our students to utilize the tools of the 21st century. Then we also need a curriculum from education that reflects a strategy of education that involves the 21st century. So if anyone comes to you and tells you they're patching roofs or doing anything else, what we are doing is we're buying We are buying more buckets. Every single year we buy more buckets for a collapsing infrastructure, a collapsing roof where it's beginning to rain. And so, but we have spent much of our time arguing about who is the least incompetent, who is the least corrupt, who is the least inept, and who is the least incapable. And we see that in our political arguments. We say, y'all are more corrupt than us. Do you know when two individuals argue about who is the most corrupt of them both, it has to begin with an admission that they're both corrupt? The same thing for ineptitude, the same thing for incapability. These are facts that we have begun to argue about. And unless we change our mindset, we can't demand what is necessary for us to be what we want to be. Grand Bahama, from a Caribbean standpoint, is the ultimate place where the next 10,000 millionaires in the next 10 years is possible, utilizing the 45 economic models that we've heard people from the Grand Bahama Port Authority and multiple political administrations speak over the last 15 plus years about what they're going to bring about. Yet, not a single framework has been established. Not one. I can't think of any for the various different economic models that we so often talk about. Maybe somebody else has a copy of it, and they could bring it to me and let me know. Let me give you some of the things that you've heard over the last 15 to 20 years about what is possible in the Bahamas. We've heard the digital economy, the conceptual economy, the knowledge economy, the aquamarine economy, the platform economy, the passion economy, the carbon economy, the green economy, the blue economy, the ocean economy, the orange economy, the internet economy, the knowledge-based economy, the data economy, the platform economy, the shared economy, the silver economy, the circular economy, the climate economy, the gig economy, the crypto economy, the AI economy, the technology economy, the blockchain economy, the energy economy, and the tokenization economy. We've heard about fintech, regtech, souptech, proptech, health tech, blockchain, edtech, medtech, biotech, govtech, insurtech, legal tech, tradefi, procurfi, data tech, travel tech, agritech, and playtech. Now ask yourself, where could you find the framework or the functioning for any one of these that you can go to and say, what is the opportunities available in these? What are the resources and what are the gateway? These, I can give you the dates and time, but our leadership have mentioned these. They still mention many of these today, directly and indirectly. The question that you have to ask yourself, where's the gateway? Where is the resource, access to the resources that you would need to enter these economies? I'm not talking about those $5,000 and $10,000 grants. We know those are jokes. Okay, just let me speak on that for a moment. If you want to go in business, any developed country who help you develop business plans, if you bring a business plan to them that doesn't cover 3 to 5 years of your total expenses, they would reject it. They would not consider you serious. Yet, what they want you to do is they want you to get a $10,000 grant, and you're supposed to build a multi-million-dollar business from that. When it says that 90% of the businesses will fail within the first 3 years, so you're already starting at a shortfall. If you want to start a business and you don't have a business plan that shows, including your salary, what it costs for you to totally operate, paying the business and your income, and your light, your water, your phone, your insurance, all those different things, you don't have a business plan. What you have is a snapshot, a synopsis that we call business plan. There's no market research. There is no financial income statements, potential, no targeted audience, nothing. So what you do is you just come and do a piece of paper, go get a $10,000 and fail, and the government get to say, we have given out almost $100 million in the last 10 years. And guess what? You call them and ask them, call the TDC, call the Venture Capital Fund, call Bank of the Bahamas, call the SBDC, call any of them and say to them, can you give us a list of all the businesses that you have funded in the last 15 years or whenever you were in existence, and where they are currently today? You try that and see if they've beaten 90% failure rate. The question is, we don't talk about these. We only talk about the things that were started, what we were given. But if you are, to use an example, the hospitality industry, you want to get into the hospitality industry, the most, when they tell you come for $10,000 to convert your house and buy linen and dishes and AC and everything, that's just for you to patch your house. They're not serious about you getting the bed and breakfast, because a bed and breakfast plan should include, let's say you're starting from scratch, it should include the price of the land, the price of the building, the price of furnishing, the price of marketing, and the cost of operating it for at least 3 years. If your plan does not include those things, you do not have a plan. You do not. Okay? So the problem is they have convinced you that $10,000 is what you need to start your bed and breakfast. You can't even buy your house if you don't have a house as the down payment or closing cost with the $10,000. But they tell you, come to the TDC, come to the SBDC. They'll prepare a plan. We're going to talk. I want to be just during these 2 weeks. We're also going to talk about this concept of us. We're going to talk about this concept of us going into the banks for loans. You are in a new dispensation today, brand new dispensation, where banks for funding purposes is irrelevant. Just because you haven't heard it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. This is why today, sitting in our banks today, check out, go and Google this, $3.5 billion of idle cash sits in our banks today. It was in the Tribune a couple of weeks ago. I've been telling you this for 10 years. My wife wrote about this a couple months ago. $3.5 billion of dead money, it's called lazy money, sitting in the bank. Nobody has gotten it. Nobody is not lent to anybody or anything. We have $4 billion sitting in the bushes, abandoned homes, abandoned real estate, and all of these different things that have not allowed us to access ownership of our economy. But the biggest surprise you may have is there is $60+ billion of cash equity sitting in the Bahamas, all owned mostly by Bahamians. I'll put 70% of it owned by Bahamians, that has been untouched for decades. All right? This is not no natural resources and all that. We're gonna have a conversation one day on that, on that. But this is actually equity that is sitting in various different assets in the Bahamas. So here it is. We have at minimum $70 billion of available financing and equity in the Bahamas. We have passed laws that have made them available and accessible. But because they were not passed for us, and the people who passed those laws did not understand the laws they passed, they have not been able to come to you and teach you on how to access it. And individuals such as myself and others who do have access of teaching you is denied the radio access and with everything else. That's why I appreciate the 2 weeks I have today. And maybe we can begin to demand more of the conversation that we have. And so let me just say, I invite you to call in and ask your question, 688-1027, 688-1027. No question is a silly question except for the one that's not asked. Let's use an example. We passed the CBC, the central bank, central bank, what's it? Digital coin, right? The sand dollar, we call it. We were the first in the world to pass that. We are good at this, being the first to do things and then parking it. We were the first in the world to pass the DARE Act that deal with digital assets. Today, and I want you to Google this again, when we passed the DARE Act, they were talking millions of dollars in 2020. Go today, I want you to Google this word, tokenization or stable coins or whatever you want, tokenization. Just use tokenization, which is the DARE Act address. and then I want you to use this word, quadrillions dollars. Not millions, not billions, not trillions. I want you to see, as of today, quadrillions of dollars in the last 5 years has now entered the place. Quadrillions. Many of you may never heard of that. Just think of that. So the thing about it is that this access is available to us as Bahamians. The question is, why haven't your leadership taught you or said anything about it? I've talked about it from the day they passed it, but what they say to you is, oh, he think he knows. And let me tell you something. The most inept, and I call it SOS, it's used expression, guys. For the ones who say this, I call them SOS candidates, stuck on stupid. Who says to you, see, Alan think he knows everything in the world. He's the smartest man there is. If I know, if there's billions of things to be known in the world, and I've mastered 50 of them, and you think the 50 things that I have mastered is everything in the world, you got to be stuck on stupid. You could go and learn 51 things. Don't have to be what I know. 51 things. Shooting marbles, maybe cutting down a tree or something. The minute you found 51 things, which is one more than what I know of subjects, then you're smarter than me. So stop that unless you're really stuck on stupid. If you're stuck on stupid, just say it, then we know who it is that's saying it. The economics of Grand Bahama is the most important thing that we have to talk about. And that's what we want to use the next 2 weeks. How could we reboot the economy of Grand Bahama? The quickest way for us to do that is to digitize our economy. What has happened in the Bahamas? Let me speak back to the broader picture of access to capital. We have been conditioned to look at the gates and the gatekeepers. And we have had even political parties who operate on anger politics, who say they are keeping you down, they are keeping whatever down. They will tell you, and people have repeated this, that billions of dollars a year is being stolen in the Bahamas when our government budget is less than $4 billion. So let's look at the government budget. If you got a $4 billion budget, $1 billion goes to salaries for the civil servants, $1 billion goes to finance national debt. That leaves you $2 billion. Another billion, mine is closer to 3.5, right? We're going to use 4. Another billion goes to what they call these continuous payments we have to make for different things, rent and lights and everything else, right? So that leaves you $1 billion to do everything in the economy that the government wants to do that requires $3 to $4 billion to do. So where is, if you only have $1 billion left, how could I steal $2 billion of it and then still do maybe 800 million or whatever worth of work? And so you've heard people say $500 million a year is lost to corruption. All of that is not cash. It's the impact of the corrupt practices that brings that value. I put it at closer to $1 billion, but it's not cash. And so when you allow yourself to be distracted by things that invoke your emotions, then it causes you not to focus on where you need to be focused on. Let's use an example of the previous administration. A speech was given in Life at Key that threatened the supposedly gatekeepers of these various different industries within the Bahamas by the current Prime Minister, Brave Davis. And he said to them that he came to tear down the gates. When questioned about it, he went to College of the Bahamas, University of the Bahamas, and gave a similar speech about, I'm going to tear down the gates. I'm going to tear down these things that's keeping you. And the gatekeepers, you must be forewarned. Bahamians and Grand Bahamians, I want you to pay attention to me on this. That is the most, I can't use the word, but donkey 9 statement I've ever heard. I heard. Why? But the problem is a lot of Bahamians have been convinced that someone else is holding you down. The foreigners, the people who hold a license for this or license for that and whatever else. And I'll bet you 99.9% of you have never applied for the license to bring me any proof that they denied you the license. But you're crying about not being able to enter this or enter that. But let's go back to the gatekeeper concept. The Prime Minister said that he was going to tear down the gates. And the gatekeepers have fortified the gate. So now when we look at the gate, we see extra chains and extra locks. But guess what? If you look to the left and you look to the right of the gate, you'll notice that there's no longer any fence or any walls. But you're so focused on getting through the gate, you don't realize that the gate, that the walls and the fence have fell a decade ago, that you could just simply walk around. But you're saying, look, they're putting extra chains on the gate and they make it bright yellow or bright red or black or whatever. And then everybody say, but what about, why are you worried about going through the gate, going through the wall? You know, Dr. Roop reminded me of something that he did, you know, when they kept breaking into his yard. He put some extra locks on the gate and took down his fence. And guess what? He proved what I just told you as being correct. Because after he locked his gates and took down his fence, nobody went in his yard. That's us. Go around the gate. Let's talk about access to capital as an example. Today, available in the Bahamas is more than those $3.5 billion. I personally believe that we should ignore the $3.5 billion that is sitting in the banks and ignore the $4.5 billion that is sitting in the bushes and focus on the $60 billion that we have access to, that we control, as well as go around the gate and gain access to the quadrillions of dollars that is available, and how these banks who have taken advantage of us over the years choke on their money. Banks does not exist except in the mind of the ill-informed. Today, if you want access to $1 million, you only need to prepare your business plan. It's called a vehicle. I want you to pay attention to that word right there, vehicle. You go and make a presentation to thousands of individuals and find 1,000 individuals who is willing to invest $1,000 into your short-term vacation rental or your bed and breakfast. Let's use an example. When you go for a business loan is different than a personal loan. You go to the bank for a personal loan, build something, you know what they say to you? You need to bring 20%. I need to see one of your children, your wife, your grandmother, your mother, somebody has to be here as collateral. In a developed environment, they look at the income of the company. Do you think all of these billion Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 1000 and Fortune 10,000 and these companies are starting every single day had to take 20% to start? There's companies that's starting today that's going to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in a matter of weeks and months. Nobody told them to bring 20% in collateral or whatever else for a business loan. However, they told them to bring the vehicle they will be using. Now, that word vehicle is very, very, very important because it is what banks ask for. Having been involved in the banking industry, I learned this during the early 90s. Banks only lend money for vehicles. I know no other bank that lend money for anything but vehicles. And a lot of you are now saying, but you just said that banks don't do it. I'm telling you, the problem is English, the language is in the language of finance and the language of English is very important. The word vehicle in banking terms is not automobile that you think of. To a bank, an automobile is a vehicle for transportation. To a bank or a lending institution, housing or home is a vehicle for home ownership. To a bank or to a lending institution, a business is a vehicle for building wealth, personal wealth or family wealth. Notice that an automobile is a vehicle, a house is a vehicle, and a business is a vehicle, and banks only and financial institutions only finance vehicles, here what they do. Why would I finance a vehicle as a bank? Because if you don't pay me for that automobile, I can take you out, get my collateral, take you out, and put somebody else in it. If you don't pay me for that house, I can take you out and put somebody else in to get my money back. Now let's look at the business aspect. If you come to me with this vehicle that I can't take you out, then guess what? I'm not going to lend it to you. And here's the problem you have. Let's use an example. What you have is where you go into the, how many of you walk into the bank and says, I'm here to buy a Ford F-150, and the loan officer say to you, does it come with 4 wheels? What about a windshield? Doors? A steering column? They don't ask you that, because the minute you say, this is what I want, they can see it. When you go and say, I want to buy that house, that home, the loan officer doesn't ask you, is there a roof? What about windows? Doors? Tiling? Floors? Leaking? Electricity? Plumbing? No, that's expected of a complete vehicle. But when you go in for your business, now here's the problem you have. You go in for your business, and they have to ask you, what about this? What about that? Do you have this? Do you have your marketing? Do you have this? Do you have this? That's the same with them asking you, does you have 4 wheels? Or ask you if the house have doors and everything else. So unless you take your business plan as a comprehensive idea to them for execution, right, they will reject it. Oh, I hear this thing all the time. But they just teeth people ideas and whatever. How many? I just wish all of you hundreds and thousands of individuals would come and show me these successful businesses that these people stole your ideas. That's now running and functioning. If I wanted to do fried chicken right now, and I go and do a plan to show how it would work, with the exception of giving my recipe, you telling me somebody else is going to start a chicken place because I said so, that your idea was so unique? Your idea, if it's such unique, you could have it trademark, you could have it copyrighted, whatever. Personally, I believe more so in trademark, which is more of use. It's like, for instance, none of you can't find no copyrighted or whatever formula for Coca-Cola, for Pepsi, for Popeyes. You can't find their formulas anywhere. They are trademarked by use. So the question then becomes then, what is this excuse you make, but you don't want to give them, share your idea with someone because they might steal it? If you share your idea with them and it's a viable idea, you can go to someone else who can also still finance you, and you can beat them at an idea. Because I say ideas are like donkeys. Can't use the word, the A word, and everybody got one. The question is, can you execute this idea you have to bring it to fruition? Because unless you're coming up with a business idea that it does not exist in the world, and there are many of those. And the reason I can say there are business ideas that's never exist in the world is because my wife and I have been working on one for the last 6 years. Right. Caller, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you. I'm okay.
Good, good. I just wanted, you said something just now that really provoked me to call. And I don't know if you just made patterning or branding here in the Bahamas. But I find that myself that when you carry something to either the bank, some of them, or especially these government agencies, and I found that even in the port, you take your idea in and tell them this is what I want to do and blah, blah, and then they knock it down. And when you look next week, Joe Blow of it. They exceed precisely to the T. I find that does happen in the Bahamas.
No, it does. No, I'm saying to you is this. But my point is nothing prevents you from continuing with your idea. If I want to do chicken in the bag or the special formula for chicken in the bag, I don't take my formula in there. I take the concept of the structure of the business I want to start. I have this idea for this business, or I have this idea for this lawn care, I have this idea, whatever. And the reason I sarcastically say to you is that the majority, and I'll put it above the 90%, of those individuals that start a business that have no idea of the business they start will fail. Go and look at the ideas that started, because the failure rate of businesses, the attrition rate, the failure rate is at 90% within the first 3 years anyway. So if they don't have the information that you would have to execute it, they may start a business, but they will not remain in business, nor would they be able to be competitive with you. The problem is not the licensing that you want, because you can make an argument for that. You can make an argument for that right now. Your greatest problem right now is to be able to have access to financing to facilitate a competitive nature to outperform them. And I'm saying today, since the last 6 to 7 years, the monies have been available to you whether you know it or not. And we're going to get more directed in our conversations as we go over the next 2 weeks on exactly how can you access these capitals outside of the Bahamas. And they have passed laws to make this possible, but they haven't told you how to use the laws. There is at least 6, I'll put it closer to 10 laws that is passed in the Bahamas right now, today, that gives you full autonomy to raise capital outside of the Bahamas in any amount, up to the quadrillion dollars, without government permission or anything else. I use the expression, if you say foreigners get better treatment, stop being a Bahamian. I'm not talking about your citizenship. I'm talking about in your approach. Coming as a foreigner.
I totally agree with that, because I know quite a number of ways that persons have garnished funds. But it should never be, because our country is supposed to provide at least grants for us and make it easier to garnish.
It's not the grants you need. See, that I hate that word grants. What you need is access to full facilitation of the monies you need to run a business. If I give you a $50,000 grant and your expenses for your business runs for $100,000 a year, including your salary, because you got to pay yourself running your business, then you are programmed for failure. Because even businesses that has the full amount of money, 80% or more within the 2 to 3 years, 90% fail. So if you have the full amount of let's say you needed $500,000 to start your business and carry for 3 years. If 80% of those businesses that have the full amount fail, what do you think will happen to you with a $50,000 grant? That's programmed for failure. And I'm saying to you is that we must abandon the system that they have got us to buy into. Let the banks choke on their money. Utilize the DARE Act and some other laws that exist. And the thing about it is, you don't even need to use the DARE Act, because Donald Trump is creating an environment that I said to you, quadrillions of dollars is available today. Nothing stops you today from getting with a group of people. Let's use this example, a bed and breakfast. You want to go build a fourplex. Let's put it at $1.5 million. $1.5 million for this fourplex. And you go, what do you want to buy a fourplex for $1.5 million? Because you need to learn, in the Bahamas, we've been servicing the masses, which, if you drop the M, tells us who we are, when we need to begin to service the classes. And we can see that difference in the TCI. Our average daily rate in the Bahamas is about $400 a day. On Grand Bahama, it's between $75 and $125. In TCI, it is as high as $1,500 a day, because they service a different group of clientele. You can't go put a room in your house or this apartment that you converted and get somebody to pay you $300, $400, $500 a day. It's not going to happen. However, you could build a purpose-built place. Now, let's just use the low end of $300 a day, $2,000 a week. So you build this, you got this, convince these people that you could build a $1.5 million building that will have a value of $2 million when completed. You will show them that it'll be totally furnished and well prepared. You will have an EV car out front. It'll be energy efficient, everything else, and marble floors, marble tables, whatever. Good. You promise these people who are now getting 1%, 0.5%, whatever in the U.S., that let's use a good figure to make them hungry, I will give you 10% per year on your money. So now you have this fourplex that you have, right? You're now getting the $2,000 a week on this fourplex. And so when you times that, you promise them 10% on the $1.5 million. That's $150,000 a year you promise that you'll give them on their money. But at 100% occupancy, your income is $416,000 on a building that you don't have to make monthly payments on because they are investing in you, not lending you the money. They're making an investment in this. We can come back to the lending too. But let's use an example and say you hit the 65% occupancy that is done. That fourplex, you would still net $270,000 a year on that fourplex. And let's say you give them $150,000, you still have $120,000 for yourself. So what it is just developing these business plans to reflect what it is. Because what you're offering them is collateralization. The digitization or fractionalization or tokenization or whatever you want now of the global banking system allows you now to sell tokens. They call it tokens. We can use this as an example to say, I'm going to give 1,000 tokens, so I'm going to give 4,000 tokens at $250 each, just in case some behemoths want to buy into it. And at any given time, this is digital wallet. When you want to transfer those tokens or sell those tokens to ownership, all you do is make an agreement with a smart contract to sell them to somebody else in exchange to digital wallet with individuals. This isn't happening. This is why I say to you, Google today, tokenization, and I want you to Google very specifically the word quadrillion dollars. One company, DTCC, has brought over $4 trillion to the table in the last 2 months. No, sorry, $4 quadrillion to the table in the last 2 or 3 months. The money is there. What you asking for is so minuscule. Donald Trump has made it now for individuals with their 401k and everything else that can invest in these tokens. And these tokens can be backed by the same stable coins that we talk about. It's not as complicated as it sounds. And I'm going to give you like 6 words by the end of the show for you guys to Google tonight so you can ask questions on it for the rest of this week. And I'm saying to you is that funding is available to you, and more so for Grand Bahama. And that's why we're going to talk also this week on this nasty concept, what I say Bahama Rock is recommending to us, of taking away 300 acres and 100 million tons of aragonite at the low end, $100 million. And they say we can have 85 jobs for the time they're doing it. And I think a $25 million impact. $100 million. If you remember now, they're supposed to pay $2 tax on that. If they pay the $200 tax on that, that means we'll have $200 million. The question is, what are they getting for that 100 million tons? That's just for the 300 square foot area. And so we got to be all from Inagua as former donkeys if we sit by and allow this to happen rather than considering having that same space used as an innovation, incubation, whatever things. I'm going to talk more specifically on that over the coming days. But let's go back to the concept of you needing access to capital. I'm going to help you, and I'm going to take you, and I'm working hard with a politician to set up training sessions for Bahamians to come to understand. Let me just say that I have not been able to get government to listen to me in 4 years. And I've gotten Michael Pintard to listen to me. And I said to him, I don't want this to be political now that the election season is over. He promises the houses and everything that he promised. And I said to him, what you said can be done, can still be done. Can I have the opportunity to show people what you meant and what is capable of us? We should not have to wait 5 years to see if you are made prime minister for these things to happen when 5 years of opportunity will pass us. And he said, I will make a space available for you to begin to do this. And before the end of these 2 weeks, we will talk about how to reach me and have you do these things. And I'm not going to hold you too much longer. We talk about this hotel. Go ahead, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Great job, man. I must say that you must be the Superman for Grand Bahama. I like this new initiative that you have going on, and I give you my 1,000% support.
Thank you.
I would hope that the whole of Grand Bahama and the entire Bahamas get behind you in pushing your agenda and bringing forward the things that are necessary to necessitate positive change and real progress.
Well,
not fantasy.
Well, it's going to happen, but we as Grand Bahamians going to have to make it happen, because understand this. Over the next 2 weeks, you're going to understand, as I said to you, the threat Grand Bahamians pose to the economic and political structure of Grand Bahama. Let me jump to the airport as an example. And this is where the grand deception comes in. The airport has been, since 2004 to today, a lie. And unless we actually have a conversation on the airport, there will be no airport built on Grand Bahama, just like there'll be no airports built on any of the other islands. Because even if the government gives a sovereign guarantee for $300 million for the airport, when they go to get that loan, they ask, how will you service this loan? And because the airport authorities and others cannot present a financing plan on how they will service the loan, they will fail. Because the financing plan is that, okay, good, you need to bring 1 to 2 million people to the airport for a $300 million loan, what we originally talked about, and what is absolutely needed for Grand Bahama. So let's ask ourselves the question. When you bring this 1 million people through the airport so that they could get the money to service the loan, where will they sleep? What cars will they drive? Where will they eat? Where will they go for entertainment and other different things? So unless when you hear our ministers or the prime office of the prime minister or anybody else talk about this airport is coming, it is a lie. And I challenge someone in the office of the prime minister, whether it be on Grand Bahama or someplace else, to release a press statement saying it's not a lie. Because you have to ask, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You must have the rooms, you must have the cars, you must have the infrastructure, such as electricity and water. You have to have, if you have the number of rooms that we need, of 20 to 25,000 rooms, that's the same as New Providence have right now, right? Then that means you need about 60,000 people to service them. Where are those 60,000 people going to live? Where are those 60,000 people going to go to school? See, so if we don't talk about having Grand Bahama reimagined, we will talk about a potential airport, a potential hotel by some foreigners over and over. We already had a hotel that was announced that was going to give 3,000 construction jobs and 3,000 jobs afterward, because it was a $1 billion deal that has already died on the table. And then we're announcing now that MSC is going to make a beach club. Is 3,000 people going to be there? Is the rooms that is necessary going to be there? No. See, that's what is called fire hosing. They move you from one thing to the next. So people, they say to you, well, we did say that you was going to have 3,000 jobs in the construction and 3,000 jobs afterwards. But look right now, the great things that MSC is going to do using a piece of the property, not the whole property, because it's not even the whole beach club. They have to come with another idea for another beach club and another casino. Everything has fallen apart, and they superimpose it by another idea. And we're now hoping that the lesser of what was promised to us happens, because we have not demanded what is the plan for Grand Bahama. From the Grand Bahama Port Authority to the government of our country, they are twins joined at the hips. The blame game they have is only to show you. They argue about who is the least inept. I mean, we have found out now that government has been responsible or had the power for almost 50 years and they didn't know. What that tells you, imagine that you had power to do what you wanted to do for 50 years, but you cried about what the other guy ain't doing. So now that we know where responsibility lies, we also know for the method of what we should move to. And that's a conversation we have to have, whether the Grand Bahama Port Authority wants to have it or not. And that's municipal governance. It isn't something that has to be created. It is something that exists. The question just we have to ask ourselves, what was the expectation for licensees and for residents? In case for you guys who don't know who own property in Freeport, you are quasi-licensees. Not the licensees in the purest sense of a license, but you are quasi-licensees that has the ability to participate in the municipality which was expected and has happened around the world. We've had places like Western Florida, City Miami Gardens, and all these other places, just that's the ones close to us, but around the world, that has come into existence, and we are still sitting on the toilet. What we have to do is this. Do you know that when the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement came around, I think it was within the first 5, but the purest of them, and the latest, the 5,000 economic zones that has came in existence since the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement is nothing more than knockoffs of our original. You say Singapore, you say this one, that one, all of them. Every single place you could mention is a knockoff of free port economic zone. The question is, how does 5,000 multi-trillion dollar locations come into existence using our blueprint? And we have not been able to. So we have to have a talk about where to from here. What's now, what's new, and what's next. What's now, what's new, and what's next. And so as we begin to wind up, I want to say something. My dad told a story once about a dog sitting on the porch. And he says that this dog used to sit on the porch, and when he used to pass the dog used to be hollering, "Arr, arr." And so he said after months and months, one day he just asked the old man on the porch, "Why is that dog hollering, always hollering?" The old man said to him, "He's sitting on a nail." My dad said, he asked him, "Why don't you lift him off the nail?" The old man said to him is, "When he get tired of the pain, he gets up himself." That's us. We have to get tired of the pain. We have to demand the path forward. You will understand that if you fix Grand Bahama, that they cannot control. Do you remember you said the gatekeepers? If they can't control the gates, and if you fix Freeport, what I just said, I said we need 60,000 for the hospitality industry alone. Not counting that 300 acres that Bahama Rock is trying to get us to give them to take out of the country. You know, when you buy land, you can't go move the land to another country, but they want to take 300 acres or more to another country and leave you with a hole in the ground. We can have a talk on that. But the question then becomes is, what is the steps necessary for you to have access to the capital that is needed? What is the strategy that you can sell investors to buy into? What is the master vision so they can see when you say we need 20,000 short-term vacation rentals or bed and breakfast, this is where I will be planted in this garden, and this garden has all the tools that is necessary for the development that is necessary. But it requires us as a collective, where it's just a few of us representing most of us, just like we send 5 MPs to New Providence, we can have 10 individuals right here on Grand Bahama that represent all of us in the same capacity. The question is, are we willing to come together as a team? When you move 60,000 Bahamians from New Providence, understand the political consequences. If 25 seats is on New Providence and you move 60,000 voters to Grand Bahama, you have moved the balance of power to the Out Islands or to Grand Bahama that exists in New Providence. So if they allow New Grand Bahama be developed without owning it or controlling it, and 60,000, 70,000, where in these economics model we talk about, people talk about the livable economy, because on Grand Bahama, the minimum wage will have to be at least $600 a week. That's the livable wage we talk about. So why won't they let you do it? Because they want to control it first. Even when they move to control the energy, they haven't. You don't understand that you don't need the power company to generate the energy you need. More so if you build a home that doesn't consume energy. If you build bed and breakfast and short-term vacation rentals that doesn't consume the level of energy. Let's have a conversation on these different things. And I ask you, for you individuals out there, right? Because this conversation has to go more than the 1 hour a day, even after the 2 weeks have passed. You're interested in sponsoring the show? Just call, what do they call the same? Call 688-1027. Just call 688-1027. Tell them you're interested in sponsoring the show and you want a more succinct on how this would go. And we can actually provide you with a template of conversation for 6 months from now on what we're going to say and how we're going to say it, so you don't have to be whatever. You don't, if you want to support the show or support a show or continuation or expansion of it is what it is, you can make a donation or you can go for sponsorship. We would like for you to actually have sponsorship so we can give you value for money for the number of people that we reach. 688-1027, or you can even reach me at 825-9300. Let's have a conversation on how we can broaden the economic opportunities for Grand Bahamians. And tomorrow I will come in with a more succinct conversation of which now, which new, and which next. Yes, let's take the caller. Go ahead, caller. You're on air.
Morning, Cialan. How you doing this morning?
I'm all right, sir.
I'm just tuning in, but I know you to be an astute man, Cialan, and I just wanted to ask the question with regard to the contribution, the tax contributions that Grand Bahama makes to the public treasury. Shouldn't our island reflect that contribution?
No. Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Here's what I'm saying to you. We no longer generate, for the last 20 years, the level of taxation that is necessary for us to survive. And this is why the government has been making the argument that the Grand Bahama Port Authority owed them the $350 million. And so the problem is not the fact that they may have owed the 350 for whatever reasons, and now we have to go and do some new adjustments that's been made. The problem we have is that we have not had an economic model that generated the taxes that is needed, not just to patch the island, but to build the island. And so where does taxes come from? The government doesn't pull them out of the air. They've been taking more taxes from us while our economy has shrunk. And so we now have to flip the script and build an economy. But at the same time we build the economy, we have to begin to take ownership of the taxes that we will pay. Because we will know, the numbers are there of what they're going to take from us. Not only that, we also know of the infrastructure build, rebuild, and expansion we need. So we just can't pay taxes. What you say, listen to this carefully. Governance without the consent of the governed is the definition of slavery. And when they tax you without representation, they are governing you without your consent. And so the question is not just us demanding building, we have to demand accountability, transparency, and access to freedom of information while they're doing this. And the one way for us to begin with doing that is called municipal governance, beginning in Freeport, because we will then have control of the taxes before it leaves the island. And we don't need them to decide we're going to fix this part of the road. Before the money leaves, we're going to fix the road, and whatever left, we'll send to New Providence to subsidize the other old islands. And that's the type of conversation we have to have. Grow the economy so we can tax ourselves and grow ourselves. And then we will give whatever. Because what we've been doing is sitting on our hands and says, okay, daddy, okay, mommy, tell us what you take from us. They don't tell us. And they said, you lucky I bought food for you today. You lucky I bought whatever, when you actually do it. Thank you. But just call me tomorrow on this, and let's have a conversation on what's now, what's new, and what's next.
All right. I'll be tuning in for the next 2 weeks, and I'll listen to what you bring to the table.
All right, thank you so much. And Grand Bahama, please share the people. Let them know the show is happening. Let them know that Grand Bahama is in transition and is coming from the power station, the Riddim. We will transform the Bahamas from Grand Bahama out, starting right here in this station. But we need your support, whether it be sharing your information or placing ads, and we'll put some point of contact for your, a few hundreds of you. Giving $10 is good enough for us to sharpen our message and spend more time taking us there where we need to be. Thank you so much. And tomorrow at 9 o'clock, this is C. Allen Johnson on Darren Cooper Live Show. It is what it is. Tomorrow at 9.
It is what it is.